Hello, good morning, afternoon, or night. Thanks for visiting my channel again. So today I'm going to show you how usually I'm animating cameras on Three.js, creating like intro animations and triggered animations using GSAP and React Tree Fiber. This is something that usually people ask me how to do it, and it is a little bit confusing, I know. So I will try my best to show my techniques, and hopefully this will help you with your project as well. I will be using as an example the the alien website, fan website that I'm building. And for example, when we enter, we have this intro animation. So let's take a look at this intro animation first because it's a little bit simpler. So as you can see here, it is done by using a component because React is component based. Sorry, my dog is barking. So you have the camera animation component here. And as soon as you go into the component, as you can see, I just commented out all of the other stuff so we can focus on the intro animation first because it is easier. So in this case, I want to animate the camera. So as you can see, this component, it returns nothing. And that's why it is used like this. And all that it is doing, it is basically grabbing the reference for the camera and using React Tree Fiber. This is how you can access your camera, your active camera. Because remember, Canvas on React Tree Fiber has a camera already. So you can see here, I'm defining the camera position, but I don't have access to create a reference to this camera here. So instead of creating another camera and then using a ref and etc., I can use this camera from inside the canvas using the use three hook. And with this, we grab the camera. And then I have the camera with the actual scene. And then what I'm doing, I'm using the use GSAP hook. This is incredible because before this hook, you will have to use use effect or use layout effect, and then you need to create a context. Then you need to dispose and revert that context. It was a lot of work, and now basically all that you have to do is import use GSAP, then register the plugin, and then you create this hook use GSAP, and then in a function I'm creating a timeline here as you can see. And then with this timeline, I'm doing a from to animation. So this is the from. This is where I want the camera to be at the start. And it might be different from this position here. And it is actually a little bit different. So let's see, for example, if I change this to be, for example, 0, and then I save, as you can see, it starts like on the bottom. If I change the number to be -2, it is a little bit to the left. And then I'm changing the way I start because I wanted this intro to show the lens flare in the background, but not that much. And then it enters in the scene. So I'm animating from this position to this position, which is the final position that I like for this scene to start the website. And then I choose the duration and then the easy type. And I think one of the most important things, it is the timing. This is something that I learned throughout my career and like playing with a lot of websites, not only I would say Three.js based, but especially on non-Three.js websites, because easing plays a very important role in the way you want the camera or the animation looks like. So for example, if I do it power 4 here, you will see it waits until we start and then it goes faster at the end. But this is not what I want for this specific scene because I want to create this terror-like cinema theme. So I need to play with the timing, and we can even do like power 0 and it starts really, really slow, like a movie camera. You can do things, for example, like elastic. And this is not looking good at all, as you can see. It looks like a elastic for the camera, but in some situations, maybe this is what you are looking for. So yeah, this is how you animate the camera. And as you can see here, this first use GSAP hook has no dependencies, meaning that it will run every time this component mounts, which is every time that we start the application. However, we have other kinds of animations here. For example, here, when I click watch trailer, as you can see, it goes kinds of inside of the spaceship, right? And then when you go back, we have another animation. So how to trigger animations based on click events? This is something that is very often really tricky to understand. So let me try to go through it. When you click here, as you can see, we have this button, which is not actually a button. It is an annotation, which is another component that I'm mapping all of the positions. So I'm basically creating a mesh on every position that it's defined on this array, and then it has a name. And basically what happens when I click, I set a global state using Vautio, saying state.hoveredPin equals to animation.name. And this annotation.name, it comes from here. So basically on Vautio, and here you can see my Vautio. This is all of the global states that I have. And then this hovered pin, which is actually empty, will gain a name. And with that name, onset is defined. Actually, we can maybe console.log so you guys can see what is happening. So in the annotation, when we click, we have the handle click function, and then I will console.log the state.clickAtPlin. Now, actually, I will console log the same thing that I'm putting inside the global state, so you can see. So when we click here, as you can see, the annotation is watch trailer. And now that we have this information in a global state, that it's easier because we can read this information from anywhere else in our application. So in my case, as you can see here, I have another use GSAP hook, and this one has a dependency, which is the clickAtPin. ClickAtPin, it is the snapshot of that state that I have on Vautio. So every time, this is kind of the same way we can create contexts, but in a simpler way, because you don't need to wrap anything on your application. You don't need to create contexts. All that you have to do is basically create this state.js, and then you use that as a global state, and then you can read data from it as a snapshot, and then you can grab whatever you want. So if I spacebar here, you will see that I have access to all of my states in the state.js store. And that's it. So once this changes, what I'm checking here, basically, if the ClickAtPin equals to what trailer, and then I am outside, so I am in this scene here, I'm doing another animation. And this animation, it is moving the camera towards another position, which is making the camera go inside. And then I'm also setting a duration, an easing, and then I'm changing the way the controls work because I want the camera to go really inside. And currently I cannot zoom in enough. So I'm limiting the amount of zoom I can do in the model itself. So I'm changing that, basically overwriting that to something else so the camera can actually go inside of the object. And then I set another state to fade out. And this is used to control the post-processing. So with this, I will show this later in another section. The post-processing effects is reading this state here to control where it should or when it should black out everything. And then when we complete, we set the current scene to be inside. And when the current scene is inside, it means that it will render the other component. So this component here. So as you can see, I'm outside. When the current scene is inside, then I change the component. So that's the way we cannot notice the transition. So if I remove this here, you will be able to see the transition, and it will not be a subtle transition. It will be instantaneously changing the component. But because I'm doing this animation, when we click, we have everything dark. I change the component, and then we have the other scene. And yeah, basically this is the same principle that I'm using in all of my projects. So the car project, my portfolio, it is always using the same technique, a global stage to trigger events. And then based on that, on those events, we can animate the camera. One thing that it's a little bit trickier, it is how to animate the targets, because sometimes, for example, for the face hugger, what I'm doing instead, as you can see here, in this scene, I'm also animating the controls target. So instead of making the camera looking at the center of the screen, so when we click here, it looks at the center and it works fine. But in that case, in that other annotation, I want the camera to look up. So in this case, we are animating both things. I'm animating the camera position to be in another position, and then right after, because this is a timeline, I'm also animating the controls target. And the tricky here, it is to use this parameter. So with this parameter, we are telling GSAP that I want this animation here to happen at the same time as at this animation here. So they will both run together. If I remove this, you will probably see what happens. So let me try to remove this on complete, because otherwise you will trigger the animation. So I will remove this and remove this one. So now let's see what happens. It is running, of course, the first animation. And then when I click here, first the camera look here. Yeah, you will not be able to see because I'm fading out everything. So let me also remove the fade out. And I need to restart, of course. Yeah, so now if I click here, the camera goes here and then it will look up. See? So it is like a chain of animations. So that's what happens when you have two animations happening like this, double two events attached to one timeline. Because in this case, I want the animations to happen at the same time. All that we have to do is add a new parameter here, which is like the way we want this animation to run. And then I say, I want this to happen at the same time. So now let's see what happens. And as you can see, it is doing the same thing, but now it doing the same thing at the same time. So they are doing both animation. They are running at the same time. But yeah, so that's the way you can animate elements like the camera using GSAP. And let's say, for example, I wanted to animate the the spaceship itself, how we can do it. Because like this is like the component is saying camera animation. But if I want to animate the spaceship itself, I don't need to run it here, because I need to create a reference and then I need to animate the object itself. So let's do it together. If we go here in the space station, so I already have a ref for this group, and this group, it is the entire ship. As you can see, everything is contained inside this group, and I can do the same thing we did there. So what I would do, I would say, okay, I want, let's say I want to animate the emissive intensity to be over the value that I have here once it is animated. So I will say use GSAP, and then we will have a function here. And then for now, I don't need any dependencies, I guess. So I will leave this dependencies empty. And then here I would just use, and Copilot is has like actually it's Codium that I'm using. It is kind of a free compile. Codium is like a free Copilot, which is great if you are not using it. It is really helpful. And then as you can see here, it is already suggesting me something, but I want to do something a little bit different. So I will say gsap.to, and then I need to animate something. So I will say, okay, I want to animate, let's accept what it is suggesting. So I want to animate materials, emissive blue, which is the name of that material, dot emissive intensity. And that's why you need to be careful with the suggestions, because not always this is right. So this needs to be this way, and then we need to animate the parameter, and I want this parameter to be, let's say, 200 in a duration of, let's say, 6 seconds. And then let's import gsap because it is not imported yet in this component. And as you can see, it already worked. But I will put a delay here. Let's say delay 4 seconds. So let's restart everything. So the see what happened. So the animation started with the default value, and after 4 seconds, it made everything glow out. But like, for example, this might be not what you need, because to really chain animations, that's why you need global states, and then you need to store the information. I need to know where the first animation finished so I can start this one. And right now, I don't have any kind of global state telling me that I'm animating I finished the animation for the first camera. So what I can do, I can say intro equals, let's say, true. So by default, this state will be true. And then in the camera animation, what I will do, once we finish this animation, so on complete, I will say state dot intro equals false. Okay, so now I'm telling, once we finish the intro animation, that the intro animation finished. And then in the space station, I will use that information. So I will say const, and I want the intro from use snapshot, and then I need my state. And then I will attach this dependency in this animation here. And then let's restart. Nothing will happen because like this is happening regardless of the information that I'm giving to GSAP. So see, it is waiting 4 seconds and then it animates. I don't want to delay anymore. So I want this to only happen when the intro is false, because by default intro is true. So I will say if not intro, then return. So okay, let's see. Sometimes I get confused with this as well. And yeah, I think it is the opposite. So let's try again. So intro is true, and now the value changed. So intro is not true anymore, and then it triggered the animation. And the beautiful part of us using this method instead of using delays, it is first distinct. The animation is happening only when you finish the intro. So if, by the way, I change the value here to be 8, and let's do it again. So now it will take 8 seconds to complete the entire intro animation. And once it's finished, then it triggers the animation. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope this will be helpful to you so you can start using this kind of techniques on your projects. And please let me know in the comments if like React Tree Fiber is something that you are using. If you are using vanilla Three.js, I can show the same techniques using vanilla Three.js. Is basically the same method, only the implementation is a little bit different. I would say even simpler because you have access to all of the global states using vanilla Three.js instead of using React. So that's why we need to make all of these gymnastics around the store and the value and the global states. But yeah, let me know in the comments if this is helpful, if this is something that is interesting to you. Please share, subscribe, give me feedback so I can understand that this content is being helpful to you, okay? See you next time. Thank you very much and bye bye.